Welcome back once again to Totally Unbiased, and we're back to the fantasy side. The fantasy side, episode 3. If you've been here before, you know what it is. And if you know what it is, you know my partners, Andrew and Aiden. How are we doing today, guys?
What's going on?
What's going on?
All right, so real quick, I'm just going to shout out our socials. On TikTok and Instagram, you can follow us at Totally Unbiased. On Twitter, you can follow us at YT_unbiased. And then on the YouTube video you're watching right here, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon for notifications, and make sure you like this video.
All right, so let's get right into it. Let's not wait. Let's jump right in. So we're going to talk to you guys today about the fantasy side of this weekend. You know how it goes. We're going to talk about some underperformers, and this is not just underperformers from this week, underperformers for week 1 and week 2 so far this season. And we're going to give a player, we're going to give our panic level, all right? So we got some underperformance. We're going to start with a quarterback, with high drafted quarterback, Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert, I'm not ready to hit the panic button at all on him. He's got good guys on his team with him. He's got Mike Williams, who's definitely overperformed what we thought he would for this season. He's got Keenan Allen on that team. They got Austin Eckler in the backfield. I wouldn't hit the panic button. They just need a couple weeks, probably more than we expected to get going.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Herbert either. You know, he's surrounded by some amazing weapons. It's week 2. Sometimes quarterbacks just start off slow. Don't panic on Herbert yet. He'll get it together.
Yeah, some pretty good points. Just something quick about Herbert. It's not that he hasn't played bad at all. I don't think the touchdowns have been there. We saw against Dallas, they had some taken away. So, take that as you will. But next we're going to go to James Robinson. James Robinson's really concerning for a lot of us.
James Robinson's concerning. It's not even his own fault. He's just not getting the time on the field that we all expected. This man is getting... he's either splitting carries with Carlos Hyde, which really doesn't make any sense, and it just doesn't make sense. There's some obsession with having a committee backfield over there, and they don't want to commit to James Robinson having 20-25 touches a game. This one, I don't see it changing. So, I mean, if you have James Robinson, I'd say sell him for a loss right now. Just cut ties while you still can.
Yeah, I'm worried about James Robinson too, but I'm not so much concerned about the volume now. I mean, week 2, Robinson had 11 carries versus Hyde's 1 or maybe 2. But, Robinson's a running back 1 in that offense. But what I'm worried about is that offense being consistent. I just think Urban Meyer hasn't really got it together with that team yet. And that's just not going to be an offense that's producing good fantasy players week by week.
Yeah, I happen to agree. I don't really think Robinson with Urban Meyer there it's not working out, clearly. It's, unfortunately, it's not what we wanted to see. But next we're going to move on to another running back that's had a really bad play that lost his team the game this week. Clyde EdwardsHelaire hasn't played great so far.
Yeah, for Clyde EdwardsHelaire, I mean, he has put up... I'll be honest, though. It's kind of numbers I expected. They can air out that ball all day between they got Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes could run with the football if he really wants to. With Clyde EdwardsHelaire underperforming, I really do think they're going to limit him because they don't have to run the ball. It's not a necessity to them. So I'd be weary if he doesn't perform better.
Yeah, I think the question with Clyde EdwardsHelaire has always been, are they going to keep the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands when they're winning, or are they going to start giving it to Helaire? And, week 2, when they had the lead for most of the game, they started to give it to Helaire, and he wasn't really producing what they wanted. And, then with that costly fumble at the end of the game, I see a downtick in carries for him, and I don't see him producing much in fantasy this year, at least not for a running back too.
Yeah, Eli was somebody I tried to avoid in all possibilities. For that exact reason, I don't think that the Chiefs trust their run game at all. I just think they're pass happy. And we're gonna move on to wide receivers. 3 wide receivers, all highly drafted, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, and they all underperformed. We're gonna start with the highest drafted of them all, DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf has had good amount of targets, but a couple lackluster weeks.
And I definitely think that's got to be attributed to Tyler Lockett doing his usual thing and balling out early in the season. I mean, this man has put up some crazy numbers in these first 2 weeks, and that definitely has negatively affected DK Metcalf. But then going into this year, DK Metcalf is kind of Seattle's number one receiver, so he does have the number one corner going up against him, so Tyler Lockett doesn't have as much pressure on him. But I think definitely DK Metcalf will start to break out of his shell a little bit, because if people keep realizing that, hey, we're covering Metcalf, but Lockett's doing all this, they might switch it around, and it's going to open up the game for him.
Yeah, I think everybody assumed a little too early, myself included, that DK Metcalf would be the sole number one wide receiver in that offense and that he would be producing good numbers week by week. But, I'm starting to believe that him and Lockett are just going to be, kind of flipping every week. So, I still like DK. I still think he's going to contribute a good amount fantasy wise, but he might just not be the consistent player that everybody expected him to be this year.
I completely disagree with you, Aiden, about DK. It's not a flip-flop. It's not. I mean, Tyler Lockett has had like 6 targets in each game. DK's had a total of 20-something. I don't think it's not. It's more of like a 7. It's like a 65-35 between the two of them if you want to talk about their percentages. But I really just think part of it is DK and Wilson aren't connecting on that deep ball yet. And that's my biggest takeaway from him. I think he'll be fine. But a guy that I'm a little concerned about, and he's got a little bit of the drop bug so far, A.J. Brown.
Yeah, A.J. Brown doesn't seem to be doing so hot. And this guy, I'm not going to fully hit the panic button, but my hand is definitely hovering over it, because I believe in the next coming weeks that Ryan Tannehill and Julio Jones are going to start to develop a connection, and they're not going to have to force the ball to A.J. Brown. He's not going to be their only receiver who could put up big and crazy numbers on that team, because I believe Julio will do that later this season. But A.J. Brown, if he could get rid of that drop bug, I definitely think he could keep pace with Julio Jones. They could both put up great numbers, but right now it's just not looking so hot for him because he's been getting the targets. He's just not performing well.
Yeah, I'm actually not worried about A.J. Brown at all. I think he just is a little rusty to start off the year. It happens with a lot of receivers the first couple of weeks of the season. But, the volume is there. He's a fantastic athlete. It's just about if he can actually secure the ball and have a good catch rate this year and actually haul in those targets that are being given to him, which, I think he's going to be able to do. And I just think it's going to take a little while for him to, just get into playing shape.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about A.J. Brown. The drops are a little concerning, but I think that's something he could figure out because he's getting open. So it's nothing of that nature. His route running looks crisp as ever. And the final wide receiver we're going to talk about is Allen Robinson. He underperformed the first 2 weeks. Week 1 was Jalen Ramsey. Week 2, he had 4 targets. 3 of those targets were in the end zone. And he dropped one of them, which was his first touchdown drop in Chicago in like 3-4 years. Like, he's never dropped a touchdown in Chicago. I personally am not too worried about A-Rob.
Yeah, I'm not really worried either. I mean, he's definitely having a little rough patch right here, but whether it is Andy Dalton or Justin Fields under center, I mean, he is the clear-cut wide receiver number 1 on that team. And as long as he's not going up against a very studded defense with a great corner, I really think down the stretch he's going to put up big numbers.
Yeah, I'm not very worried about Allen Robinson either. I think that the main thing that's actually limiting him isn't really his play. I just think it's the scheming of that offense. I don't think they air the ball out enough. And, his specialty is hauling in those deep targets. So I think once Fields starts under center, I think that's going to, help him a lot. I think Fields has a great arm, and that'll help him produce significantly in fantasy. But even with Andy Dalton, I think A-Rob will be just fine. It'll just take a little while for them to start getting those deep targets going.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really astute point, Aiden. And, let's kind of just jump into this. I want to just dive right in. No introduction. George Kittle. George Kittle,
I mean, I have his numbers right here on my phone. I mean, week 1 and 2, both 4 targets, 4 receptions. Week 1 was for 78 yards. Week 2 was for 17. He's not, I mean, it really depends on the team. I mean, he played Detroit week 1, who does not have a great passing defense. And he played Philly, who we really didn't think would have any sort of lockdown defense at all. And I think this is attributed just to George Kittle himself. He's not the player that everyone assumed him to be. He had one season comparable to Travis Kelce, and now everyone wants to debate him as the number 1 wide receiver. He had one good year. Travis Kelce has like 4 good years in a row of being a crazy tight end. I just think George Kittle's a bit inconsistent, and I'm not buying it on him.
Yeah, he definitely has big consistency concerns, as well as injury concerns every season. And I agree. I think he was very overhyped for not producing very much. Like he had one good season, like you said. But I just think that offense has so many weapons now. Shanahan's going to be spreading the ball around every game, and I don't see Kittle getting the volume share that he used to get. And for that reason, I don't see him as a top 5 tight end anymore.
I still think he's top 5, but there's a couple guys I'd shuffle out. Debatable on this session. I was thinking about putting in Mark Andrews. He has not looked good at all. Starting up, but Kittle's a little concerning. He's always been boomer bust, but the volume is low, and that's a problem. So, against two teams that don't have a great linebacking crews, so I'm not really sure how to take that. I really aren't. I'm really not. But let's jump right into will they last? Now, these are the guys who have maybe overperformed a little bit to start the season. Maybe they did a little better than we thought. And off that same, game, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts. What do we think about Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, for Jalen Hurts, I mean, I definitely do believe we kind of undervalued this guy going into the season. He hasn't really played a star-studded defense, but he's putting up pretty good numbers. I mean, I'm pretty sure he put up about 20 fantasy points in his first 2 weeks. He's definitely mobile. He can move around a pocket if it collapses, and he can put the ball in the right spot. I mean, week 1, I definitely saw him put the ball in some pretty tight windows. I mean, I think his wide receiver dropped the pass that I'm thinking about in my head, but I definitely think he can improve as the season goes on and really be a sleeper.
Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts will last. The main critique of him going into the offseason was the fact that he didn't have a good completion percentage. He just wasn't, completing enough passes. But now this season, through the first 2 weeks, his completion percentage is in the mid 70s. So, and he provides great rushing upside. He is, I think he's a top 5 quarterback for rushing yards right now as well. I really like Jalen Hurts as a starting quarterback in fantasy this year.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts, we all knew about the rushing upside, and if he can, he might not be the greatest quarterback, but if he could be a great fantasy quarterback. So enjoy him while he lasts, if he lasts. We're going to move into Darrell Henderson, a running back. 2 weeks in a row, he had 2 good starts, I believe 17 plus points in both starts. Sony Michel didn't see the field at all in either of these games until Henderson had a little bit of a rib cartilage thing. That was when Michel got all the snaps, but Henderson.
I think, just like you said, Nick, as long as Henderson stays healthy, he's going to be the number 1 guy on that team. He's going to get most of the snaps. He's going to get most of the carries. And, I mean, he has performed well in these 2 weeks. I'm curious to see. I definitely think that now with Matthew Stafford on that team, they do have an urge to air out the ball more because they definitely know that he's capable. So I just want to look down the road in the future to see if that affects him in any way, but I really don't think it will.
I do think that Darrell Henderson will continue playing at the level that he's playing right now. But Sean McVay said a few days ago, actually, that they plan on easing Sony Michel into this offense and slowly giving him more carries. But, I don't really think that affects Henderson too much. I think he'll maybe see a few less carries a game, but the gameplay's there. He's a great running back. So I like him as a flex play in fantasy.
Yeah, I actually believe he's more of an RB2 at this point if he continues to go this way. But let's move on. I want to move on to a couple wide receivers. 3 wide receivers. All 3 of these guys actually, there 2 of them were undrafted in some platforms. But we're going to start with one of them who has had a huge splash in week 1 and a good week 2, Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, Deebo Samuel has definitely performed well, and I think a part of this is a little attributed to Brandon Ayuk's issue beginning of this year. He didn't play at all, really, or get any targets week 1. He wasn't really a big factor week 2, and I definitely think that was why more of the volume went in Deebo Samuel's favor. I definitely think if his volume as far as targets was to drop a little bit, he could still put up big numbers. But I'm worried if Brandon Ayuk comes back and he starts playing like he did last season for certain games, that he could potentially drop a little bit lower than we expect. But I'll give it to Deebo. I think he could do it no matter what.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. I think it's all about whether or not Ayuk actually ends up taking a significant target share in this offense once he's back to full playing shape. But I also think that Deebo has done more than enough to prove himself as a great wide receiver, and I think that he sticks as a very big piece of this offense. So I think that he will last.
That's a little interesting. I mean, Debo's getting the brunt of the coverage right now, or not the coverage, the targets right now, and the coverage will shift his way if he continues at this rate. But let's get into another one. Mike Williams, after years of being mediocre and disappointing, Mike Williams has shown out through 2 weeks.
Yeah, Mike Williams is definitely proving that he can be a wide receiver too on his team, and even a flex wide receiver if you're stacked at wide receiver in your fantasy league. And it kind of sucks because I wanted him, but sadly I won week 1, so I didn't get to pick this guy up. I definitely, I get it. Definitely down the stretch, I think he's going to continue to put up big numbers. I think him and Keenan Allen make a great pair together, and they give Justin Herbert more than one target that he has to look for down the field, because he also has Austin Eckler, who he could pass to out of the backfield. So Mike Williams, I would definitely, if you can, trade for him now, because I don't think he drops at all.
Yeah, we've seen some great things from Mike Williams early on in the season. And the question there has always just been consistency. And, through the first 2 weeks, he's scored 22 points in both games. So, everybody's saying he looks like a much better wide receiver. He looks more energetic. He has like a good, faster step than he did in previous seasons. I love him as a fantasy play this year.
Yeah, Mike Williams has finally shown why he was drafted 7th overall, but it took a long time to do it. He's even outperformed Keenan Allen in both games, in my opinion. But here we go to the last wide receiver, and then we're going to get into one tight end. Sterling Shepard, New York Giants Sterling Shepard. And I'm going to start. I think Shepard is here to stay. Galladay will get more involved, but I feel like there's a lot of receptions to be had on this Giants offense, and believe it or not, it's not as crowded as you think. I feel like Darius Slayton will become an afterthought. Kadarius Toney's more of a gadget player. Sterling Shepard is Daniel Jones's favorite target, and his target floor, I believe, is 7 targets per game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely as of right now, Sterling Shepard is getting, like you said, about 7 targets a game minimum. But for me, I know that it's more because Daniel Jones has a connection with this guy. It's the only guy besides Slayton who he's played more than one season with. And I think if Galladay really starts to develop a connection with him, he starts playing a little bit better. I believe some of that can be taken away from Sterling Shepard. So I do think he'll last, just not at the 100-yard receiving games. I think he's going to be dropping back down to like 50 to 75 yards and a touchdown. I don't think he's going to be putting up any crazy numbers if Kenny Galladay starts playing for what he's paid for.
Yeah, all offseason, Sterling Shepard's main focus has been his conditioning. That's all he talked about all offseason. And, he proved that he's gotten in great shape. And that mixed with the fact that him and Daniel Jones have developed this amazing chemistry, I think, he's due to shine this season. And I think that he's going to be one of the most consistent plays in fantasy because of that high target floor. So, for that reason, I think he's a great play.
Yeah, so we're getting to the last guy here, TJ Hockenson. TJ Hockenson has shown to be the only target Matthew Stafford loves over in Detroit. Matthew Stafford, wow. Jared Goff over in Detroit.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems that he likes throwing the ball to him. And I definitely think that as long as they develop the right plays around TJ Hockenson, he'll perform as he has been. But if they go up against teams that have a studded secondary, it kind of makes me nervous, because if they can't get the ball to Hockenson, they're really not going to try and get the ball to anybody. And defenses are going to start realizing we got to cover this man. And that definitely concerns me, the fact that Jared Goff is so Hockenson heavy when he's throwing that ball. But I don't know. I don't really think I could give Hockenson the will they last, because I feel like defenses are going to get catch on quickly.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you're making. But, I just think Hockenson has proven this year that he is one of the best tight ends in all football. He's amazing at catching balls, especially contested catches. In that game against the Packers yesterday, he was just incredible. And I think his target share is due to stay. And honestly, I don't think you can really game plan around him too much. except maybe double teaming him. I think Hockenson is just going to be a great play in fantasy this year, one of the most consistent tight ends.
Yeah, that's a bunch of it. There are a couple interesting points in there. I think defense will wise up to Hockenson, but I think his volume will speak louder than defensive schemes. I really do. I think defenses they'll be keen to what they're doing, but if Hockenson's the only guy, he's going to get the ball. But that's really it for this episode of the fantasy side. We talked about underperformers and will they last. We got some guys we think will last, some guys think we don't. Listen up. So on Friday, we will be having Fantasy Friday. We will tell you guys everything you need to know for this upcoming weekend. We will give you your boomer bust, starts and sits, and must acquires. So thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. Check out all of our channels. We got TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and of course YouTube, where you're watching this right now. Thank you guys for watching the vid, and check out the rest of the channel.